IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Geek podcast! Yay!
We're doing this not in front of a live studio audience anymore. Because of the corona situation.
We had to cancel all of that.
Yeah. So many people got tickets
fans
to come watch us record the podcast and we said, nope.
Sorry,
in the
we
interest
care
of
about
your
you.
safety.
Yeah, we care about you guys.
Yeah.
Dinkar.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
I thought we'd start this week with a bit of optimism.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea what transpired this weekend because this is being recorded before that.
Just before the weekend.
However,
Yes.
I think it is important to look upwards and onwards.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, only because, the world is bleak right now. It might as well spread some joy. And one of them is in the form of a Pixar film called Onward that we saw very recently.
Yes.
And we are here to talk about it.
What did you think of this movie?
At
The outset, before we explain what it's about.
So I ended up, I never watched a full trailer. I only saw some clips on Instagram. And I don't know what it is about maybe Pixar films that I don't really like watching the trailers for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I just wanna experience it.
I was gonna say, one of the things I really enjoy about Pixar movies is when they take a very bizarre premise and run with it and turn it into something super relatable. They do this so many times.
They are
Right
champions
since the days
of that.
Monsters Inc.
Yeah.
Or
Excellent.
Toy Story, you could still say is a somewhat
Simpler?
understandable
Toys Come to
story.
Life, yeah.
Yeah, as is like maybe A Bug's Life. But,
My favorites, dude, a rat who's controlling a dude who
exactly,
can cook.
such strange ideas.
So
right?
weird, but conceptually it's very weird but strong weird, you know?
Things you would never think of. There's an easy distinction to be made. Like Finding Nemo, classic story, just set in an odd world, right? Underwater.
Yeah.
But Ratatouille, just a bizarre idea to start
what
with.
a crazy idea.
Yeah.
And it eventually leads itself to Anyone Can Cook, which
Exactly.
is a superb message to everybody, right? Like that's amazing. The other one which I think about is Up a lot because Up is so weird.
Starts from a very understandable premise,
Yeah.
a lonely old man, a loser of a kid, and then it's like, we gotta hunt this rare bird because of this explorer who abandoned humanity years ago. So, what?
Oh my god, are we saying something, Dinkar, that the best Pixar movies are the ones that are the weirdest, like conceptually?
They're definitely the ones I enjoy more, I think
so too, yeah.
Though I would say possibly my favorite Pixar movie is Finding Nemo, which is a somewhat classic story. Like
I think I prefer I like Finding Nemo, but it's still not conventional, I'd say.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's a conventional story. It's taken.
It's taken, kind of.
In a sense.
Yeah, but I think I just find the idea that it has a weird, set of characters in it, and just the premise is different.
Yes.
Right? And it's a quest movie.
So even the classic stories, they do take into bizarre directions, but man, the weird ideas to start with, like in this movie.
Oh man.
So just to explain, the story is about two elf brothers.
Yes.
Elves brothers?
Elf brothers.
The brothers elf. So they live in this world that is a classic fantasy world, but again, right away, bizarre table setting. The magic in this world eventually fades away because people realize they can invent stuff.
Yeah, they can just basically be like a regular human civilization.
Yeah, so instead of magicking up a fire, they could just flick a switch and
go through
turn
an
on a light
industrial
bulb.
age.
Yeah,
basically.
they hit the industrial revolution and they're like, well, modern technology is much better. So essentially, they end up with a world that's exactly like ours, except populated by fantasy creatures.
Yeah.
So instead of pests roaming through your garbage like rats, it's unicorns because
I love
unicorns have no job anymore.
And I like that they didn't kind of harp too much about that. It's just
they
an
just turn
aside.
up sometimes as these disgusting looking creatures with horns and wings.
I did find that quite funny. I was quite.
There are centaurs who are just normal people with normal jobs.
Yeah.
Elves.
Yes.
Trolls. Manticores.
So it's basically kind of like what is that Will Smith movie that we saw that we didn't see? Sorry, the Netflix one.
Bright.
Bright.
Yes,
it's
it is
kind
a
of
little
a world
Bright in that way.
that is lived in already.
Yeah.
And has fantastical creatures, but set in a very contemporary urban setting. Like they live on a very suburban kind of street with a cul-de-sac and everything, and it's just but they just happen to be elves and live in this fantastical world. Yeah.
And there is an elf in Bright as well, but there was a clear. It was pretty much just a normal world, and the orcs were pretty much stand-ins for race. It was very District 9 in that way, in terms
but
of
not
idea.
at all executed.
Not very good,
apparently.
is all.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, this is the story of Onward, where this is the world they live in.
Yeah.
Now, these two brothers, played by Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, had their father pass away really young. So the elder brother, played by Chris Pratt, called Barley, knew him for like maybe 6 months or a year, I assume, because he has very few memories of him.
he
maybe
was
a little more.
Yeah,
actually.
maybe 4 years. But
Probably,
until he was like 4 or 5
right,
years
you're right,
old.
because he does have a few memories of him even when he was dying.
Yeah.
But Tom Holland's character, whose name Ian, right? Yeah. Tom Holland's character Ian never knew his dad at all, and has kind of spent his whole life being a nerdy, closeted sort of
introverted kid
who's kind of really scared of everything in the world.
Yeah.
And is always trying to live up to this idea of his dad because he misses what he never had. And that's why we start the movie.
Yeah. Really interesting premise. Only because, I mean, I don't know. Pixar really knows like a really warm way to handle death, I think.
Yeah.
And it's pretty insane that a lot of Pixar movies have the idea or the concept of death as a very present kind of thing in it.
The fear of being forgotten.
Exactly.
The ultimate fear of being forgotten.
Exactly. Right? Just go. So, I mean, whether it's a Coco or Up, it handles it very with a lot of grace and it does it really really skillfully in such a way that it turns the sadness of death into like a positive emotion about, maybe it turns it into something about being your best version of yourself without somebody, or letting go of this memory, or basically living beyond it. And I think I think they do it successfully in this film. And I did not see it coming at all. From the start to finish, I was like quite surprised how they reached that emotional kind of space right at the end, and I was quite moved, and I think they did a really good job.
They definitely did a really good job. So the story of the movie kind of kicks off when the elder brother, who's super into magic, is kind of like this.
It's very Jack Black-y kind of.
It's very
character.
Jack Black-y.
Dude, Chris Pratt's so good.
He was great.
He's the best part of the
movie.
movie.
Pretty much a version of Andy from Parks and Recreation, and nailing it.
But on like roids. he's really kind of
and also strangely competent in a way. His entire deal is essentially that he spends all his time lost in this fantasy sort of world.
Yeah.
But in this case, in the world setting that they've done, it's obviously a realistic thing. So the clearer analog would be he's super into history.
He's into,
and that's
like,
all he cares about.
He's like, for me, it came across as like this guy is like, obviously he's very into like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. He's like a nerd.
But in that world, it's real.
But in that world, it's real. And it's like the thing about his character is that, sometimes you think about characters and how they evolve through films. This guy, he's pretty static throughout the film, but I think that's what makes him so rock solid as a character, right? Like, he doesn't deter from who he is at all. Not once in the movie is he like, he kind of is happy and sad, and there are moments of that, but like as a character, is very confident and very sure about who he is.
The change comes in the way you view him.
Exactly, yeah, because you think he's kind of a silly dude, right? And you're viewing it obviously through the principal character, which is Ian, who's supposed to be the audience's view of everything. But there's like a really good moment in the film, which I really appreciated, to kind of acknowledge and substantiate why he's this guy. And he talks about the few memories he has of his father, and when he's telling his younger brother, he says that, there was the time that, I had to go and say goodbye and I couldn't do it. After that, I decided I'm never going to do anything like that ever again. And I'm always going to be, like confident
like a brave kid.
Yeah, exactly.
So the father was super sick and he didn't want to see him all hooked up to machines and stuff in the hospital, so he just got scared.
Yeah.
And that changed him enough to go like, well, now I'm not going to be scared.
I'm never going to do that again. And you know what? It would take something like the loss of a parent to kind of initiate a change like that in somebody. So it
and
felt
I suppose
completely.
That also explains why he feels so comfortable in a lost sort of world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he kind of. I mean, anybody who kind of is, wants some kind of. Basically like a separate thing to kind of dive into. I mean, like even for us as kids, the way we kind of would go into science fiction stuff, it's kind of very similar to that. And yeah, man, I think he's one of the best written characters I've seen in a while, like in a Pixar film. So it was,
a classic character with a great spin on it.
Yeah, solid.
So it's essentially a quest movie, all right.
And by design, like I
by
think
design,
so well done.
quite literally written into the plot. But the father leaves these two sons a spell that could possibly bring him back for a day.
Yes.
And it turns out that Ian does have magical abilities, and he almost successfully conjures their father back, but he messes it up, and only the bottom half of their father, so just his legs come back.
Wild concept that I did not see
It
coming.
reminds me of Brave, in a way.
So yeah, one is, it definitely reminds me of Brave.
Because essentially it's a kid stuck with a parent who can't fend for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
True. Yeah, very true. You know what I
felt? The mom's a bear, the dad's the legs.
I always felt like that in this, when I came into this film, I think it's about what Pixar does with the choices it makes for who the characters are going to be, right? And most of them, I mean, they very well, now a lot more, but in the beginning, initially, they would never use anthropomorphic humanoid characters,
they
right?
avoided it for a while.
And I think it was to make the distinction between them and DreamWorks and stuff like that. And now DreamWorks has, unfortunately or not, kind of been associated with this, we're going to use humans, and they're like weirdly shaped, and they're not like realistic looking humans, but they're not non-realistic. And Incredibles did it well, and then they kind of left that alone. And Ratatouille kind of, but it's still about a rat. And so when I saw the initial images of like these elves and stuff, I was like, oh, it kind of has this DreamWorksy vibe to it.
A little bit.
And
even in terms of design.
In terms of design, the way, the nose, I mean, actually, I think that's just a Pixar thing. Because this guy, Ian, could have been like the, parallel universe son of Linguini from Ratatouille, right? Like it has
very
the same
face as well.
Same kind of face and everything. And so that kind of like, it lulls you into this kind of idea that, they're just doing like a crazy wild story. But man, Pixar's so good at bringing it back to the heart of it. So in this movie, as they kind of go along this quest, kind of remind me of like a Finding Nemo, like where this character, his character Barley reminds me a lot of Dory, right? Because there's one scene in Finding Nemo which we all love, where Dory asks Marlin to like just trust her and say and just do the right, because when he didn't trust her, he does the jellyfish thing, and then she gets like really, and then when he sees that scar later on, he's like, cool, I'm just going to go with what you're going to say, because you obviously have something that I don't. In all the logic that I have, you have something else. And I think that reminded me a lot of the same relationship. Where, he just says, Bali was just like, yo, I know I come off as this goof, but you have to like just trust me on this, and like that works out in its own way, but
for less of a reasonable reason. But okay, we'll get into it. Let's take a break and come back and talk about what we enjoyed about this movie.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. I hope you're all safe this week. Coronavirus hasn't stopped us here at IVM yet, and it is our 5th anniversary. You should be aware of that, and we'd like to thank ourselves for that. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, HDFC Life and Paytm Money. Sponsors make this stuff possible. If you work for a brand which you think would benefit from sponsoring the show on IVM, please do reach out to us. We appreciate that. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by Joel and Tushar, hosts of our new show, Uncle Please Sit. They talk about what made them start a podcast together, current issues, and a whole lot more. Also, last week we celebrated our 500th episode of Cyrus Says. On Cock and Bull, we had Kajol as our guest, along with Antriksh and myself. It was a hilarious episode. We reminisced about the journey of the show and the various guests we've had on. Please do check that out. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam talks with Kalpen Parekh, president at DSP Mutual Fund, about various frameworks of mutual funds. On Football Shitball, Karthik Gaurav and Sivram talk about United beating City, Liverpool winning 2-1 against Bournemouth, Arsenal being completely unbeaten until now in 2020, and tons more. On Begin the Journey, Ashish narrates various stories and ideologies on money, relationships, and future. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav talks about a success story of internal migration, but one that is laced with a discriminatory remnant of the past. And with that, let's get you back to your shows.
Hey, we're back. We're talking about Onward from Pixar.
Pixar spends so much time deeply researching their movies. Like for Finding Nemo, they just lived with a fish tank in their office for 6 months just to understand how fish move and stuff. They did the same thing with this movie.
They visited the elves?
They visited the elves.
Nice.
They had elves working on the movie.
Amazing. So they were very inclusive and diverse in their teams as well.
They were like,
Amazing.
we're making a movie about elves, we should represent elves.
Yeah, we should represent
If only we could do that with real people as well. But
do you think Pixar is good? Yeah, Pixar is pretty decent at diversity.
I don't really know, actually. Didn't Rashida Jones and her writing partner leave because that was because of John Lasseter specifically?
I think that's because he's...
But they were very upset with how he was representing race and women. So
in the movies, though?
Specifically on the movie they were working on with him.
Yeah.
I'm guessing
that was Toy Story 4.
It was Toy Story 4, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I'm trying to see where they're gonna. Yeah, I'm not. I'm trying to see like
we don't really
where
know,
the
I
scope
suppose.
is to.
Plus, everything you read about Pixar or watch about Pixar has. Well, it's a great story. It's very much an underdog story that about a company that kind of came from nowhere and transformed the world.
Yes.
But I suppose there's a lot we don't see as well.
Oh, 100%. And the nature of being a family-friendly company like a Disney and stuff like that. That dark underbelly is obviously protected, and just
like
not,
Disney is straight up evil.
Yeah,
and Pixar owns Disney now, so
yeah, it's true. Well, Disney owns Pixar.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, those are the sides we do not choose to kind of think about. I mean, well, we also don't know a lot about it, but yeah, there's been enough information about how. I mean, Disney himself was an anti-Semite, so so anyway. But
don't say that, he can hear you.
But in his
cryogenic
chamber, that Family Guy joke is my favorite.
Yeah,
where he's just like, he comes out of the cryogenic. We're letting him out. He's like, are the Jews gone yet? He's like, no, put me back in. Oh my god. Oh man, Gary Gulman does amazing bits on this whole
on Disney
on Jews being persecuted generally.
Right.
He's got some of the best bits ever. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
This movie. Okay, let's talk about stuff we like specifically, other than the story itself. Like, one of my favorite characters in this movie was the Manticore, who's pretty much called just the Manticore. At one point when she's giving her name to a cop, she's like, last name Manticore, first name the.
Yeah. I actually really love the mom also.
The mom also is great. Like, just great characterization all throughout this movie.
And that's what I actually really like about this film. That even though they have taken such a fantastical world and they're literally elves and manticores, they're all like people you kind of know. Everybody knows like a single mom, or like, who's, or like a widow, or like, you can really see what, the character that, she's dating this, a centaur. Whose name is what again? I can't remember.
I forget. Officer something. Colt,
right?
Yeah, because he's a centaur.
Obviously, yeah. So Officer Colt reminded me, and I've not seen this done too much, but I think this is part of like Disney's thing to kind of, obviously they want to represent more sides of families, like more, even apart from this, the diversity part of it is just like in any family, right? You will always have like the odds are, you'll find a family that is got either a divorcee or has somebody who passed away, and that's just the way it is. And I mean, it's not, you can't, of course you can tell so many richer stories that way. This reminded me a lot of like the Ant-Man situation, where Ant-Man is like, this guy who's, divorced and his wife has kind of moved on. And it doesn't like, the idea that maybe we had as kids that, oh, how can, mom go and remarry and like, I don't know who this guy is. But like...
An idea that Disney kind of propagated, didn't they?
What?
Stepmoms, evil stepmoms,
stepmother. Well,
evil step-parents was a thing that, well, it was around since fairy tale times, but Disney was just like, I'm leaning into this.
That is true.
They have moved on with the world.
Yeah, and I think it's really awesome that, it's just like... It's just there and nobody really thinks about it that much. It's like, it's just like, okay, this is just a part of the story, and you have yet another whimsical character like in Bobby Cannavale, who plays, I think, Judy Greer's husband in Ant-Man. Yeah. And he's just like a really funny guy. And it makes it so much better in that film because he's a cop and this guy's obviously an ex-convict. Yeah, just... really well written there.
What's nice in Ant-Man and in this movie as well is that it's not like they're not really subverting, but they're being more realistic now in the sense that step-parents aren't immediately evil, right? So these kids kind of resent Officer Colt because they're like, oh, he's a boring guy.
And, and he's a cop also. He's a straight edge,
Yeah, exactly. So they think he's boring and they make fun of him and stuff, but it's not like he's the evil step-dad.
Yeah, he's definitely not. In fact, like...
Even though he is kind of chasing them the entire time.
But that's, I always find that to be like, when he's chasing them, he's like doing it out of concern. And his wife is just like, is the mother of these two guys. So it's like, I just found that to be really endearing in a funny way. And I don't know, I think this movie has a ton of really great relationships and development. I think that is definitely one of those. I can't remember another Disney movie doing that of late, which is like, I don't want to call this progressive thinking. It's really not. It's about a standard.
It's more like they've caught up to what the world is
exactly. So I just like that. That's a lot more representative than just generally like a rat who's teaching someone how to cook is a fantastic idea. But this is kind of like, there's like a lot more realism in terms of like how families operate in this. And there's ultimately at the center of this film is a relationship between two brothers. And it's just a great one, man. It reminded me of my brother, and I was like, oh, this is great. So yeah, I definitely like the way that, even though I thought going in that this is like a DreamWorks kind of movie, and I don't know if it'll have a soul or anything like that, it'll just be a fun adventure. They did both, man, successfully. Yeah,
they did really do both successfully. The way the brothers' relationship evolves,
so good.
Especially like the beat towards the end, where Ian kind of comes to a realization about how he's been viewing his brother, and his relationship with his dad. That was possibly one of the best moves I've seen, where he just kind of
solid.
He realizes what his brother has meant to him all his life.
And it's it's something you do.
I mean, without the brother changing or bringing it up himself, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think he's just. I think the idea of just having, that he's got a little notebook which he writes these things, and he just like looks at it and he's just like, man, the father figure really that I'm looking for has kind of been there, in my life. So it's. I thought that was like super well done. Man, okay, we'll take another break. I want to talk about the absolute like heartbreaking scene, which is like the best scene in the movie. At least I think it is right after this break.
How many times have you caught yourself Googling stuff on health and wondering if it's the right information? How many times have you heard different health experts give opposing views, which has only left you confused? There are rising cases of cancer, heart, diabetes, stress, and autoimmune diseases. Meet the patients and the experts who paved the path of true healing. Join me, Rachna Chachi, cancer nutrition coach and nutritional therapist on Heal and Hearty. I take you through my own journey of recovery from an incurable disease and the journey of so many others who healed only via nutrition and holistic healing. Find the answers you seek for what's good for your health and what's good for your soul. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. Don't forget your date with good health.
All right, welcome back to the Geek Fruit Podcast. We are talking about Onward.
Yeah.
You were talking about a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, before I get to that, the title, I always hate when, there's a deadpan look into the camera and he goes like...
Well,
not in my. No, what is that? In Entourage, they do that thing, right? Kevin Dillon, who plays Vincent Chase's older half brother,
Johnny Drama.
Johnny Drama, right? He has a show. He finally becomes successful at the end, and he has a show called Four Towns.
Right.
And there's one line which kind of becomes really. It's like a play on Queens Boulevard, which is the first movie that makes Vincent Chase really famous. And he's like, are you kidding me? I am Queens Boulevard. Okay, and it's cool because Vincent Chase does it. And when Johnny Drama does it in his show, he's like, you kidding me? Not in my town. Not in my four towns. Not in my four towns. So I always hate it when,
when they telegraph
like a Gone Baby Gone or whatever,
But they don't say Gone Baby Gone and Gone Baby Gone.
I think they do. I think they say something, it's like a version of that, I think.
No, it's not.
Yeah, of course it is.
No.
Isn't it?
I don't
remember. Maybe this is a joke I was making about Gone Baby Gone.
Yeah.
But
Gone Baby Gone's a fairly serious movie.
It's a
very good movie. Yeah.
And I think the way they do it in Argo is great.
Well, yeah, it's inherently a part of the story.
The script, yeah.
There, it's more like they took an organic moment from the script and turned it into the title.
You think so?
Yeah.
I just thought it was great for search engine optimization.
Well, there is that as well.
Yeah. But
they do it in this movie as well, right? At the end where Chris Pratt looks in the camera and goes like, wow, this really has been an onward.
And onward. But, so the way they kind of do the title in the film was not expected, and it was really well done.
Yeah, it was a really nice little... it was almost like an Easter egg.
Yeah, it was. And I thought that was perfect.
It's thematically very relevant because the entire thing is about them going onward in their quest.
And like moving on.
Yeah, no one ever really says it in dialogue. And like there is a possible moment where he does literally say the word.
He does say it, but it's...
because of how it's said, it's very cool.
I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away.
It's really, really nicely just slotted in there, and it comes at a really good point in the film also.
What's this heartbreaking scene?
Man, oh my gosh. So finally, right at the end, and I don't know if we're spoiling stuff, are we?
Well, at this point on spoilers.
Okay, cool. Spoilers. Great. Man, so they make it. They do it. They find the gem they're looking for, and they manage to kind of cast a spell to see their father, but only Barley gets to meet him, right? And it's this really good moment where...
Bold choice.
Very bold choice, where Ian and Barley both have to kind of decide who's going to get... And when it comes down to a very elemental decision like that in any movie, a proper Sophie's Choice vibe, it's like, that's the crux of the film, right? Why Civil War will always stick in my head is because at that moment when Tony kind of figures out that, this guy who has been trailing along this little journey of ours for so long, the Winter Soldier, is the one responsible. That, like, that bomb drop is so well done because it brings the entire conflict of the political, just the rhetoric down to a very elemental kind of thing. And I think whenever movies do that, especially when they have a very complex plot, like Onward, which is about elves and fantasy and spells and all of that, which are really well done, by the way they kind of seed the spells and the magic into the movie, so that has a really good payoff at the end. Great, really well executed. But when it boils down to it, it's really about this final decision that, Ian says that, what, you see, Dad, I'm going to fend off this giant beast that's chasing us. And the real moment is when he says that, you never got to say goodbye to your father. I never knew this guy, but I had you, so it's chill. And maybe if I met this guy, I just wouldn't know what to say, but you have something pending. And I think that closure, which he allows his brother to have, is great. But the real, tear your hair out moment is like he gets to see all this happen through the cracks of of all this debris. He can't get to it, but he has to watch it, and that is just that's too hardcore, man. I was just like, this is a great movie. Man. Yes, it was a great movie. I was like, waiting. I was like, what is the Pixar moment that is going to destroy people? And it's that one. It's definitely that one.
I will say one thing that that occurred to me while watching this movie is that so the typical Pixar blend of heartbreaking moments and just funny gags, it's kind of woven in throughout. This movie, it kind of sneaks up on you. So throughout the movie, it's really funny, by the way, just like great visual gags throughout, not and a fair amount of verbal gags as well.
Just great comedy.
Could be one-liners. The visual comedy in this movie, fantastic throughout.
Awesome.
Really, really well done. And the emotional moments, even when they do occur, are well, dramatic, but not weigh your heart down, I can't move anymore kind of dramatic. As Toy Story,
you're right.
Or other
I think
movies
Toy Story has
can
earned it over a long period of time.
Sure, but
Toy Story 2 is definitely more affecting than Toy Story 1 because of Jessie.
Feeling has amplified, obviously, with a franchise like Toy Story. But I think typically Pixar does in Up, where the first 10 minutes will just destroy you.
Or Finding Nemo, man.
First time
I ever cried before the credits.
In this movie, even though it starts, several years after the tragedy of their dad dying or whatever, but they kind of slowly fold it in, and which... maybe it's a feature and not a bug, because by the end of the movie, when the emotional moment happens, you're like, whoa, I wasn't ready for this. I thought we were just having fun here. So it kind of really folds in.
I think it happens twice in the film. The other scene which is really, really well done is where they kind of cast a spell when they want to look disguise themselves as their mother's boyfriend, this officer. And, when he said, and the caveat of this thing is the conceit is that, if you tell a lie, you'll start getting revealed. And by mistake, he kind of says something that kind of makes him feel that his intentions of his brother, basically that he thinks that his brother is basically a screw up, as they say in the movie. And that also was just oh, this is supposed to be visual gags, and then suddenly it converts itself into a really kind of deep moment, and you feel bad, you're just oh shit, that's well done. Because they took something very visual and made it really, you took something fun and made it sad, man.
The Pixar formula.
Oof, wow.
But I feel all those moments, so when they happen, obviously that's a moment that hits you, but I was just wow, the story is getting slightly serious. The end, it kind of it goes from 0 to 100 in 10 seconds.
Man, in fact, the comparisons are weirdly similar, but not for the reasons that you think it is. But it's in the Lord of the Rings. I know that's a quest and this is a quest, but that's really not the similarity. But the similarity between Frodo and Sam, for me, was very apparent in this these two guys. Especially because Sam is classically also this kind of bumbling guy who's very reluctant. He's reluctant in that, but he's in the end fucking saves the day, man. And in this case, this brother is, man, I don't know any brother like this really though, because he's so supportive through the whole movie. But I think, they telegraphed that earlier on, and it's just really well done.
Again, a classic Chris Pratt character, because he's kind of a screw up and a goof, but heart of gold.
Heart of gold.
Throughout.
Same.
So he's been into magic and fantasy his entire life, and then when he finds out his brother has actual magical powers,
he doesn't
he's
go
not
like
jealous or resentful.
exactly.
He's just like, wow, I'm so amazed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they earn it. Like they earn that.
Yeah.
Because typically it wouldn't be that way. But I think it's also just generally the guys
Our younger kid has a younger.
I'm a younger sibling, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're
but
the
like,
one with the powers.
Sure. But yeah, man, I think the older brother kind of understanding that, the family's not going to deliver on all the things that it's, supposed to. And I have to kind of fill in that gap. And like, it's really, it's great, man. Like, I didn't expect this to kind of move me in that way, but I thought it was really well done. Yeah.
Let me close by saying thematically, what
Yes.
we talked about, there's really, maybe 4 or 5 key characters in this
Yes.
movie, right? Not really more than that. The 2 brothers, the dad, in a sense, the mom, the Manticore, and Officer Cold.
Yes.
And that's about it. And they're all fundamentally good people, which I think is really important because we mentioned this in our Fruit Picks episode the other day where I was recommending The Good Place.
Yes.
But Mike Schur has done this repeatedly in his shows where
Yeah.
everyone is fundamentally a good, nice person.
Yeah.
The Good Place is literally a show about that. Now Mike Schur is writing a book called How to Be Good.
Yeah.
But everyone in his TV shows tends to be like that. Pixar has also done that a lot of the time. It's somewhat rare that they have outright villains.
As in, there's no antagonist particularly in this film. Like, it's
Exactly.
more, it's a MacGuffin
and I
kind
think
of...
that's really important, and it kind of resonates well with our times, right? Where
Yeah.
you don't necessarily
don't
always
need-
want to see like an outright, well, this thing is evil and this thing is
Yeah.
good.
The other thing it reminds me of is Wreck-It Ralph 2 or What Ralph Breaks the Internet. No clear antagonist in the
Not
film.
really, yeah.
It's just about it's about when people kind of don't live up to their potential and
Yeah.
you kind of have to bring them back. So I think that's really...
It's
yeah.
kind of realistic in
Yeah.
the sense that we don't necessarily face outright villains in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we do, and sometimes we elect them into power, but
Yes.
that's a different thing. We can't fight them directly. But essentially, you're saying when everyone around you is good and people are good, you still run into problems. And
Of course,
no matter
yeah,
what
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
life you live.
I think it's just... it's because people aren't emotionally equipped right. You can't live like that. You have to kind of grow and you have to evolve. And I think everybody kind of brings themselves down at some point. I think like Ian's problems in this film are his own. Like they're his own self kind of created kind of thing where he kind of does muster up the courage to kind of speak to all these classmates of his, but then he just gets like completely unnerved and clearly the boy has anxiety. And he just kind of he ruins potentially what could have been. And it's not like those kids are like bullies or like anything like that. They're just like, oh, okay, cool, you want to have a party? Sure, let's do it. And then he's like, no, I can't do it anymore. So I think you're right, man. I think a lot of them are self-manifested kind of issues, but man, when you're dealing with the real world, like death or like the loss of a friend or a parent or whatever, I mean, that itself just creates its own world of issues, man. So a lot of it is just mental health issues. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. All right, cool. So Onward, definitely recommended. Where would you slot this in your Pixar ranking?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It's tough one, man. There's so many movies.
Because there's so many great Pixar movies.
Yeah.
I would say in how many Pixar movies are there?
There must be more. Yeah, at least about
I would
20.
say this is like maybe middle of the pack for me.
I don't think Pixar has done a bad movie. In my opinion, I don't think they've made a bad movie.
Cars 2.
Huh?
Cars 2.
Okay.
Cars 2.
Fine, fair enough. Okay, it's not bad.
It's not bad, but it's basically Mater's movie, and it's not.
Yeah,
it's
a straight to DVD
DreamWorks
movie.
is
You
what
have
it
to
is.
look at
By Pixar standards. Is it the worst Pixar movie?
Yes. Okay. Now you have to look at Cars 3 like it's Krish 3, which is that
you go
it's
straight
actually
from
Krish
Cars
2,
to Cars 3. Yeah.
but it is it's a sequel. I will say this though that even like the slightly lesser films and again this is are still good. Like I saw The Good Dinosaur, which and after such a long time because people were just like, no, it's not good. I was like, man, can you do this? Can you make this movie? I like bald in that movie, and by the way. Also another death of a parent, by the way. So Pixar, I see what you're doing, man. Stop killing off parents.
That's their entire thing. But just because it's such a tough ranking system, I'd say this movie is well above average and a highly recommended watch.
Definitely.
But in the canon of Pixar movies, I'd say it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's
for
in
me
the
right
middle.
now.
That's fine. I think maybe also with time, it might... how sad is it that if a Pixar movie does not completely devastatingly like destroy you that it doesn't rank. But yeah, I mean, it's a great film. I think.
The strike rate has gone down over the years purely because they've made so many movies. It's impossible to keep making masterpieces, and they did for a solid 10-15 years at least.
And I also feel like this is the other team, like the younger guys making a new film. Yeah, maybe. Jesus.
Not really.
But
well,
the
it's
newer
the next
crowd,
generation.
They look like and huge, because I saw Pete Docter's an executive producer on this, which is great. So I think they're just making them, grooming them to now deliver the top tier of whatever Pixar. I don't know. This is a great movie as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. All right. Cool. That's our episode. Thanks for listening. And do check out the Geek Food podcast previous episodes as well as us on social media, Geek Food HQ on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.
Welcome to Peak Planet, a new podcast where we delve into the fallouts of the growth path that we, and indeed much of the world, has chosen. Sustainable growth is the buzzword. Until we nail that down, we need to ensure that we keep our population healthy and also have the resources for our increasingly urban lifestyles. I'm Karthik Ganesan, a researcher at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, a Delhi-based policy research institute where for almost a decade we've been trying to explain and change the use, reuse and misuse of our resources. In the first season of Peak Planet, we take up air pollution, public enemy number one and an invisible one at that. Increasingly, the most important risk factor for adverse health outcomes, air pollution has become the most unwanted byproduct for an aggressively growing economy. Over 4 episodes, we find out how prepared our systems are to deal with this crisis. You can catch the entire first season of Peak Planet out now on the IVM Podcasts app or website, or wherever you get your podcast from.